Welcome to week 2 of Ldrs 5333, Leading Across Cultures. This is my second informal video. Again, my name is Rick Rome, your professor, and I just wanted to cover a couple things from this first weekend moving into the second week. First of all, I'd like to say great job on the discussion forum. Some really interesting conversation on what countries you want to study and your experience, and I'm impressed with the breadth of cross-cultural experience that a lot of you have already. We are covering, you guys are covering cultures from around the world in your individual studies, and I'm really excited to see and learn about all the different cultures. One of the neat things about this course is that we get a chance to hear from our peers in the discussion forums, and then at the end, their final papers and projects in week 8 or week 7 and 8, so you'll get to not only learn your own culture that you're studying in depth, but you'll get a good overview from some of your peers on the cultures that they're studying too. And I really encourage you to take advantage of that and learn from them as well as your own studies. I trust everybody had an enjoyable Independence Day this past Monday. Hopefully you were able to celebrate and take a little time off. I know you're all busy with jobs and family and ministry, and oh yeah, that MBA program too. But I just pray that you had a great time, and my real prayer for all of us is that we never take for granted the opportunity that we're given and the freedoms that we're given living in our country, and for all those that have gone before us the last 240 years to pave the way for that. This week in week 2, we look at Geert Hofstede's model of culture. He has done the seminal work in dimensional organizational culture models. He's a cultural anthropologist from the Netherlands. His first book came out in 1980 after he did a big study of IBM, or for IBM. He was actually employed by them. And he later came out with another book that many of you have seen. Some of you, I think, have used or studied him maybe through other courses in your undergraduate program, and I think a few of you actually read one of his books in maybe one of my classes. I brought out his books here so you could see them. This is the second edition of his main study called Culture's Consequences. This is more of an academic work. Maybe if you're working on a PhD program and you want to know all the details of how he did his surveys, this would be a great resource. But he also wrote this book, which is in its 3rd edition now, Cultures and Organization Software of the Mind, for more of the lay reader or maybe an undergraduate or even a master's level course like this one, although we're not reading this particular book. Both great resources, both in the SEU library. So we're going to be looking at those. We're also going to read chapter 4 of our course book by Trompeniers and Hampton Turner, Riding the Waves of Culture. Chapter 4 is on their first of 7 cultural dimensions that they call particularism versus universalism. So we'll read that as well as do the in-depth study on the Hofstede model. In addition to those books, there's a couple websites that I've sent you or given you access to or pointed you to. One is Geert Hofstede's own website that ends in .nl for the Netherlands. The other one is the Hofstede Center, which is a commercial company that does consulting that is licensed Hofstede's model, and it has the ability to graph cultural comparisons on there, so you might want to check that out. There's also 2 mobile phone or mobile device apps, one for Apple products, iPad, iPhone, iPod I guess, and one for Android products, so you might want to check either of those out. I have the one on my iPhone, and I like it because I can compare cultures right away really easily with the touch of my fingers anywhere I'm at with my phone, so it's pretty convenient. There are free versions of both and paid versions. I recommend checking out the free version first. Like any of them, they're a little bit more limited, and then if you want to pay, I think it's 20 bucks for the Apple one, I know, you can get the full version. Also giving you many resources online, a bunch of articles to read so you can get a good gist of his model and how you could compare 2 cultures using it. He has 77 countries in his study. There may be a few more now on the Hofstede Center because they've incorporated some other studies that use Hofstede's model to provide cultural comparisons. You'll note there's a little asterisk next to a country's name if it wasn't in the original Hofstede study on that website. In our book this week, I wanted to point out one of the best ways to look at and study these different cultural dimensions. You'll notice each book or each chapter has these comparison tables where they ask a certain question based on the dimension and give answers based on how the country respondents replied. It's a 0 to 100 scale. I'm sure you can see that in your book, and it shows kind of from least to largest how different respondents from different countries responded. This model does not have like Hofstede's model, does not have like a single cultural dimension value for each dimension, but it has values for each question that's in this book for each dimension. This book hasn't been updated, the data, since it first came out in its first edition in 93 or 94. One thing that I checked every time a new edition came out, I wanted to know, hey, is this new data? But it's still the same old stuff. There's another great thing in the back of each chapter that I think is worthwhile looking at that'll help you as you do your discussion forums. There's the test yourself questions. I don't know if you can see that. Then there are the recognizing the differences. A table in the back, doing or tips for doing business, another table, and when managing or being managed, tables that kind of show whether you're on one side, one end of the spectrum or the other of each cultural dimension, what you might expect. So you can look up, hey, where's the US at? Where's the other culture at? Where do I kind of fit based on how I feel about that cultural dimension? But each chapter has maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 pages in the back with these tables that kind of summarize everything that the two authors wrote about in the chapter. So they're a great resource to use, I think, when we're doing our discussion forums. And if you choose to use this model in the end to study your country. We're going to look at 5 different models. There's Hofstede, there's Trompenaars, and then the Globe Project actually has 3 different models that we're going to look at. And you can choose one of those 5 sometime in week 6 probably, or before, as you're thinking about it, to compare your country to the US using one of those cultural dimension models for your paper in week 7 and your project in week 8. So 2 other things I wanted to point out. First, this is the I don't know, notorious liked to disliked APA manual. I'm sure you're very familiar with it, or maybe you've just learned how to write an APA online, but I do expect you guys to use this. This is the standard writing style that we have in the business school, so be familiar with this. There are copies of this in the library. They're pretty cheap to buy this book if you want to go to the original source, and I think there's a number of websites online that can pretty much walk you through on how to do in-text and end of paper, end of article citations. I'm not so concerned with the writing style, like the abstract and using passive voice or neutral gender voice. What I really want you to do is use this format to cite what you write in the discussion forums, in your paper, and in the notes pages or at the end of your presentation. And the one other thing I wanted to highlight this week, this is a Culture Smart book. This happens to be the country of Panama. These are travel guides. I've had the library order about 60 of them. Some may be checked out because people use them for missions trips over the summer. But it's a nice condensed 150-page, large print, lots of picture guide on culture in each particular country. It's a good way to, hey, let's take the model that we're using and make some predictions about how the U.S. is different from, in this case, Panama. And let's use another outside resource like this Culture Smart book to verify if the model predicts what it says it does. We always want to trust but verify. It's a Russian proverb, by the way. Doverai no proverai. Ronald Reagan used to like to quote it back to Mikhail Gorbachev in the 80s. Yeah, we want to trust the model and we want to use it, but we want to verify it with outside sources. Because sometimes you'll find, the data is old. Hofstede's data is from 68 to 72. So you may find that sometimes cultures have changed a little bit, and you may find other resources that disagree with what his model predicts maybe. It doesn't happen all the time, but it occasionally does, and I think it's good to point that out. So we want to trust the model, but verify it with outside sources. And again, this is just one possible source. I know one of you already emailed me and told me you bought the book. They cost £6.95, so it's probably better right now against the US dollar, so maybe this is a good time to go and buy that. I think that's it for this week. I just want to say thank you again for your first week of class, and I pray that God gives you lots of opportunities to use your new cultural knowledge in your life, in your work, in your ministry, and certainly in this course.